Today in this video, I'm going to go through the process of setting up a UI in the Unreal Engine. If you are used to doing UI in Unity, doing it in Unreal is a little bit different. So I'm going to go through the process of creating a very simple HUD style UI on the first person character. And then in another video, we will go through setting up a small program on that to count coins being collected. So first of all, if you are following along, this is just a basic first-person game project. No variant set. It is just, you play it. You are the character running around with the basic controls and nothing else. The first thing we do need to do is we do need to create our UI widget. So different than Unity, where we would just put it right in the outliner. We would just create a canvas and put stuff in there. Instead, we have to create that UI object. So in my content folder, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder just to hold this information called UI. And then in the folder, I'm going to create a new UI widget. So I'm going to right click, find user interface, and we're looking for the widget blueprint. And we're just going to choose the user widget. I'm going to call it W HUD for heads up display, and it is a widget, so the name makes sense. And when we double click it, we go into the editor section for this. So widgets have two main views, the designer, which is where we set up the look of it, and then the graph, which is where we can set up the blueprints for it. So we're just going to work first in this designer area. And usually first you're going to want to just put in a canvas panel underneath panel right here. And this kind of gives you the layout of what this UI area is. And it should be set to be like a usual screen size. Then inside of this panel, we're just going to put a very simple text. So under common, we're going to go ahead and drag and drop a text block in. This is going to eventually keep track of like a score of, we're going to collect coins and we're going to raise the score of that. So we're going to keep it in the upper left. Over here on the right in the details panel, we do need to set this up a little bit better. The first thing we do want to do is change the name of it, since we are going to be accessing this in other areas. We probably don't want to call it text block underscore 0. It'd be hard to understand what that is. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it score, since that's what we're going to be keeping in there. We do also want to click on that this is a variable, since we do need to make changes to it when we do collect our coins. So we can change the anchor. This can help so that if you do resize your screen, that it stays, connected to a specific part of the screen. Since it is in the upper left, we should probably anchor it in the upper left. We can change the position. So if you want to make it look a little bit nicer, maybe put it in a specific spot in the upper left, we can do that. And generally, unless you do need it to be a very specific size, we probably just want size to content, so that the size of it will change based off of what text is in there. Some other stuff we can easily change. We can change the text in the text block. This is something that we will ultimately be changing as code, blueprints. But, just put something in there if you want. I usually just put gibberish or something specific so that I know that eventually my blueprints are working, because they should update when we hit start, when we play our game. And if I still see that gibberish in there, that means that I did something wrong and I need to go back and check that. We can also change our font. You can import your own fonts in if you want to. That can be a nice way to help with the design of your game, so that it does have like a specific feel and aesthetic to it. We can also change the size. We can change the color. We can treat it basically like font in any program that we want, that we're used to working in. So maybe I'll just make this like a little bit bigger so it's a little bit easier to read. So yeah, a very basic HUD, but this will kind of help us get started. I'm going to make sure I compile it, even though I haven't done anything really with it, but we do need to click compile and we will save it. So we have our widget. The next step is going to be to get it displayed on our character. In order to do that, we do have to access the first person character blueprint. If you're using a different type of character blueprint, you would put it then in that one. But for this demo, I did use the first person one. So I'm going to go to first person blueprints and find that blueprint, which would be this BP first person character. This is the one that we need to access. So we don't want to touch any of this stuff in here. Instead, what we want to do is we are going to come up to the top up here and we're going to create a little mini blueprint to display that widget we just made. So first, we do want to make sure that we're being a little bit more forward thinking, that we are going to be needing to keep a score with our player. So we're not going to use this in this video, but we're going to need it for the next video when we actually keep a score. But we are going to want to create a variable for that. So before I put the UI in there, I'm going to go over here and create this. It's going to be just a score variable. Boolean probably wouldn't be appropriate since we do need to keep track of a whole number. So we're going to switch this to an integer. So again, not going to use it in this video, but we'll use it in the next one for setting up keeping score. In order to call the widget, we do need to create a custom event in our first person character blueprint. So I'm going to pick a spot. I'm going to right click. I'm going to search for add custom. And we should be able to find this add custom event. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it create widget event. I'm not going to call it create widget because that is actually a specific thing in Unreal. And I want to be able to find it easy. So I'm going to call it create widget event. And this is what we're going to call to create our widget. So we need to tell it what this is. So I'm going to pull off of here and I'm going to search for create widget. It's this one right here. That's our event. So we don't want to call ourselves. We're going to create our widget and we're going to tell it what widget underneath here. So underneath class, we're going to search for our HUD because that's what we named it. And we'll put that there so that we are going to create our HUD. It is a good habit to say who this belongs to. It is a first person player, so first person, not multiplayer, so it's not super necessary, but it's a good habit. We do want to make sure that we get our player controller so that we know that it is definitely going to the right person. It's just a good habit to be in. So we are creating it. We do need to actually get it displayed. We're going to do that by creating a variable out of this so that we can access it later. We're going to call this WHUD. And afterwards, once we get that, we'll then be able to add it to the viewport. Add to viewport. And we do want to make sure that we are hooking that up all the way. And that should be it. We should be good to go as far as this goes. But we do have a small problem where we have our event, create widget, but we never call the event yet. So it's kind of one of those things where you always have to remember that even if you create one, you have to make sure that the engine calls it. There are only two things, two types of events that the Unreal Engine automatically calls with no need for other intervention, and that is your begin play, which happens when you hit start and the game begins, and on the tick event, which happens every frame. So we need to make sure that this create widget event gets called at some point. There's also other ways, like you can do like button presses can also do events, but that doesn't really seem like something we'd want to do with this, like on a button press. Instead, it would make sense to have this widget created when the game starts. So we're going to right click, search for begin play, and it should just be this event begin play, so that when the game starts, something will happen. What's going to happen? We're going to pull off of here. We're going to create widget event. This is this. So I know it seems kind of weird to have it here and here, but you can kind of view this as this is all nestled inside of here. So when the game begins, it's going to find this and run through it. So we're going to hit compile and we're going to hit save. So that if we come back over here and we play our game now, we have our UI. Notice it is still our gibberish because we haven't changed that yet. We're going to need to hook that up into the player so that it looks at that variable that we created for the player and update that score for us, but that will be in another video. So if you just wanted to figure out how to get a UI showing, this is probably good enough. But if you want to actually make that UI do something by collecting coins and update, that will be in the next section.